Captain here, thanks for watching Andertons TV. And today, the wonderful Rick from Fender has dropped by to see us. Now, rumour has it that you are head of R&D for amps.
Well, something like that. It's like I help develop the product. I would never say that like I'm doing the amps myself. I don't hand wire them or anything.
Right.
But with the team and stuff, I help develop the product.
Okay.
Like all the amps, guitar amps, bass amps, stuff like that. Yeah.
And how far back are we going in your history with Fender?
Well, you know, I've been with Fender like 13 years, and I started off as a graphic designer. I've been doing product development for the last 7 years or so.
Okay.
So, you know, 68 Customs, I was a part of that.
Yep.
The Bassbreakers, upcoming stuff that I've been a part of. And then I also do a lot of the limited edition amps. So when you guys get those in,
yeah.
You know, the colors, speakers, things like that.
Okay. Well, look, so I knew Rick was coming over for a few days from the States, and we were chatting about, you know, what would be cool to do, and there are bucket loads of new amps in the Fender range this year, from ham-wired tweed, beautiful ham-wired tweed amps, down to, you know, a new range of modeling amps in the Mustang range. But we've kind of done those, and I thought it would be fun to revisit two dear old friends, well, certainly one dear old friend and one slightly newer kid on the block, and talk about why these amplifiers just have this enduring success. You know, what is it about the simple kind of 15-watt all-valve guitar amplifier that guitar players just love and love and love? You know, there's I don't think there's ever any criticism of these things, are there? You know, they're not too expensive, they're not too loud, they sound great with all variants of guitars and pedals and stuff. So tell us a little bit for people who aren't familiar with the Blues Junior and the Bassbreaker. Can you give us a bit of history behind these two amps?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think since the get-go, something that people are drawn to with Fender amps is, especially these days, like the idea of like full stacks and huge volume. There was a time where PA systems weren't good, so you needed that.
Yeah.
Really hard to play those amps in a house. I think the thing is the right size, the right volume, the right tone, and then they take pedals really, really well. I mean, we live in kind of a golden age of pedals, you know, whatever you can think of. And the thing about a Fender, and we have to hold true to this, is that the amp has to sound good with pedals.
Yeah.
That's one of those things, you know. So sometimes, you know, I think, you know, I love the Bassbreaker overdrive in the 15, and they have some great rock tones, but it's always important that the Fender Clean sounds great because it's like a canvas for your pedals.
Yeah.
And these days it's like, you know, pedal boards get bigger and bigger, and you know, and so it's always important.
I mean, the Junior, to be fair, the Junior came out really even before the pedal craze, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, it's at this point the hot rods are over 20 years old, so I mean, they're like a vintage amp at this point, and they're evergreen. It's one of those things where it's just like you can go around the world, you can take your pedal board, you know the sound that you're going to get. You know, it's like. People love boutique amps and all this stuff in the hand wiring. We do that too. You know, we got a new hand wired, you know, deluxe coming out, and the 57s, and that's great, and they sound tonally awesome. But if you're on a budget, and you know what you're going to get. So there are bands that tour the world with a hot rod deluxe and their pedal board, and they're happy because it's consistent, sounds great, and it does what they want it to do.
I still think that it is that. Because the Hot Rod Deluxe and the Deluxe, you know, which is its sort of semi-twin, not quite identical twin brother, they're a sort of a softer, more, you know, forgiving maybe Fender tone than perhaps, you know, they're not. It's not like an old Deluxe or a Princeton or even a Twin. You know, it's a slightly more rolled off top end. I wonder if that's what makes it so good with pedals, you know, and
there's a part of that. I mean, there's one of the things that I've realized. I mean, even with Fender amps, you know, you have a bright switch, and sometimes on a Deluxe you have the bright cap that's on the volume. You know, other classic amps sometimes that have EL84s and stuff, they have a ton of sparkly top end, which makes them sound amazing. However, overdrives and distortions sometimes can sound a little rough because they're accentuating the high end. And I think Fenders have that nice mid-range scoop, and the top end's bright but not sparkly, or not overly sparkly, so that it interferes with the pedals, and I think that's a big part of it.
Now, I don't think we've done a video on the Blues Junior for probably 2 or 3 years now. So can we just remind ourselves of, you know, if we just go no pedals, it's a single channel amplifier with a fat switch, which introduces a little bit of gain, but not really enough gain that at low volumes you can really rock out with that. So it's very much a clean amp that needs pedals to drive. But what is it? It's got a beautiful reverb tank in it.
Yeah.
So it's very, it is a classic Fender tone. But give us a few kind of.
So you have the articulation on the top end. You've got a little nice reverb, but there's warmth, bridge pickup or neck pickup. But there's also that sort of sensitivity that it makes you sound like you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You play this guitar, you play this amp, you're going to sound like you.
Yeah.
And there's an honesty and a clarity to that really helps you just get your playing together as well.
Yeah. And what have we got in a standard Blues Junior in terms of a tube complement and the speaker that's in there?
As far as the speaker that comes with it,
yeah,
it's an Eminence speaker that comes with it, which is, we've worked with them for a long time, and it's just well voiced for the amplifier. It's got the reverb tank in there. It's EL84s, which is kind of a deviation from the standard Fender. People think 6V6 and 6L6s. So there is some truth to. There's a little more sparkle in the top end of an EL84. But they worked really hard at the time to have all the tonal imprints that make it a Fender amp. A little bit of the scoop in the middle, and a warmth in the low end that's there. It's present.
And it's 15 watts, so it kind of sits in that. I wouldn't say. I think if anything, Fender have probably improved the really low volume performance of Bassbreaker over Blues Junior. Blues Junior has that volume control that's kind of like nothing at all. Oh, just there's about a millimeter of home use volume, isn't there? And then it's just, or not home use, but like nighttime bedroom sort of practice volume, and then it's into kind of medium, too loud if you've got a baby asleep in the next room, but maybe not too loud if there's no one in the house, sort of thing. And then it opens up from there into quite a capable small gigging amplifier, doesn't it?
It does. Things have changed over time as well. I think there was a point where amps were supposed to be meant to be played for shows, for events, not bedroom practice. But we all know that we love to play at home, and you want to have a great sound at a low volume. So the biggest difference I say with the Bassbreaker 15 versus the Blues Junior is, a lot of the Blues Junior sound comes from the power amps as well as the preamp, mostly the power tubes.
Okay.
So with the Bassbreaker 15, because it has different gain stages, you have preamp gain, and that means you can get those kind of crunchy tones at lower volumes, and that helps in the slow increase to volume.
Let's have a little listen with the Dude on.
Sure. Okay. So I'm gonna turn on the Dude. It's a great just type of mid overdrive. It's got a deep and a treble. Keep the volume relatively low, so it's like you said.
Sounds killer. And we've got no effects loop on these amplifiers. I forget, is there an effects loop on the
There is on
Bassbreaker?
15, there is an effects
loop. So there's no effects loop on the Blues Junior. So you've really, everything's in the front end. But if you're getting your gain from a pedal, or your heavier saturated gain from a pedal, it really doesn't matter that you've got the delay going into the front end, as long as it's coming after the drive. So can you just pop the Echoplex on, and we can kind of have a little listen?
So...
It sounds great. I mean, really, really good. And again, I think we get a little bit obsessed with this idea of going and spending, $1,500, $2,000 on some sort of boutique little 15 watt amplifier, and don't forget the humble little Blues Junior. It's such a great amp. You've got a Russian pickle there, the MXR, sorry, the Way Huge Russian pickle, which I guess is sort of vintage Big Muff kind of vibe. Is that does that work well into the?
Yeah, I think with most like a Big Muff type of pedals, sometimes some people use a little bit of a booster on the front just to warm the top end, or a treble boost, something like that. they have that kind of cool, ratty sound. So I think of like early, Floyd, or even like Dinosaur Jr. or something. Let me turn off these other pedals here. So it's going to be a bit fuzzier than like the Dude or something. So.
It's a monster sound. Now, so look, Blues Junior the standard version, which I still kind of think's got a classy, classic look to it. The silver grill cloth and the black vinyl, and it looks smart. But if you want something either even more vintage looking, there's a lacquered tweed version of this with. It's got the Jensen in it.
It's got Jensen, yeah.
And what does that do to to sort of the tone?
Jensen is kind of considered the quintessential pairing with a Fender amp. We used them from back in the day.
Yeah.
So there's something about that particular speaker that has a top end clarity. We call it the wine glass thing, where it's just this like really nice presence. But there's a vintage feel, so when that amp gets cranked, the low end of the speaker is a little bit looser.
Okay.
So for a lot of the old tweed amps that people use in the past, these classic sounds, part of it is that speaker kind of giving up the goods, so to speak. And I just feel that it has a little bit, it's just a different shift in the sound. I almost feel like it goes towards the tweed sound in a way.
Okay.
Speakers are a big part of the sound in almost any amp. It's the biggest thing you can do to change the amp sometimes. We get obsessed about tubes and caps and all that stuff, and I've done all that to amps, and generally like the first thing you can do to make a difference is changing the speaker.
Yeah. And that's probably the easiest thing to do as well.
Yes.
It's the one thing you haven't got to open
Stay away from the electronics if you can help it. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I can imagine that something like this with a cream back in it or something would radically change the sound, probably give it even more bass end and a great sound. And then if the tweed thing and the black thing isn't your bag, then once or twice a year there's usually like a limited edition version of the Blues Junior. It'll be a completely different color. Maybe I've seen them with. Actually, have you done an Alnico one where
I've done it with
and I've seen them with hemp speakers and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, the Canvas Rex is like a big one for people wanting to change, and we all have different tastes what we go to, or one person's bright is another person's piercing, whatever. So some people love the warmth of the hemp cone. But yeah, I mean, that's the part that's fun, is like I get to be like a kid in a candy store, mix and match speakers and stuff, and then we try them out and it's like, wow, that's cool, it adds a different flavor. So, I love Celestions, the greenback sounds great, Celestion Blue, the Alnico Jensens, Eminence makes, obviously the C-Rex and stuff. So it's like, there's a plethora of tones right there. Like, it's almost like it's an entirely different amp.
I wonder if that will become the next craze beyond, like, pedals right now is the craze for sure. I wonder if it'll be speakers, and people will be just like every month they'll be swapping a speaker out in their Blues Junior just to sort of see what happens.
It might be that way. What's really funny, and I saw this happen with the 68 Customs when they came out, we voiced those with the Celestion V-Type, which is a really nice sounding speaker. And I saw people talking about it, and they were changing speakers and trying all this stuff. And then about 2 months later, it was like, you know what, I'm putting the V-Type back in. I really like the way it sounds. So, we do the diligence to make sure that things, match up. And we realize it's a journey, it's a process for every guitarist. But sometimes you're good right where you're at.
I get that. I know I've been involved with other, British guitar amp manufacturers. And they'll invite you up for like the final thing is quite often, right, there's 10 speaker cabinets in the room, and you don't get told what's in them, because I think if you know what's in them, as soon as you know what's in them, you're already kind of predisposed to thinking, I think I'll like that one, or I think I'll like that one. So you don't know what's in any of them, and they're just using a switcher box to go through. And as you say, it radically changes the way that the amp sounds. And the hardest thing I find when you're going through that is you go, actually that speaker sounded the best with the clean setting, but that speaker sounded the best with the drive setting. And so you're kind of going, is there one that's a good blend of the two?
But that can be it's a very delicate point. Sometimes you have to decide what it is you're trying to do. Are you getting the drive from the pedals, from the amp? Are you going for warmth? Are you going for clarity? Are you going for cutting in the mix? That's to each guitarist, it's a journey,
So that's a cool amp, and you've heard it with a few different pedals. Would it be fair to say that this is the biggest selling amp in the Fender catalogue?
Yes,
it
it's
is.
tube amp.
Biggest selling tube amp, yeah.
So it's like, year over year, you get some, like, so we do the Mustangs. They've done really, really well.
Yeah.
We sell a bunch. But when you look at what sells for us, like, as far as just, it's always the Blues Junior, Hot Rod Deluxe are always in our top amp sales.
Yeah. So look, Bassbreaker. This kind of, I'm not, is it a Bassman, is it a Blues Breaker, is it a sort of a hybrid of the two? I mean, what's behind the name?
Well, it's a good question. Some people asked that question earlier, and really the way I can say it is, when we approached doing those amplifiers, we wanted to go in an area that we had a hand in. Mm-hmm. The bass in that comes from Bassman. Mm-hmm. So was one of the first bass amps that guitarists stole and loved the sound of it. And another amp company used that design and changed a couple of different things and started their own amp company. And
we can say that. Can
you? Marshall, yeah,
of course it is.
Of course, and it's like he saw the demand because guitarists really liked the way it sounded. Yeah. It became its own thing. So like they started, their career that way and went and had a glorious career. So then he did the 212 combo that Eric Clapton played on the Blues Breaker album, and so that's notoriously named as a Blues Breaker. Yeah, people love that sound. About, I want to say 15 years or so ago, maybe longer than that, we put out an amp that was a Bassman with 2 Celestion speakers called the Bassbreaker, and it was the idea of a Bassman.
Did you?
Yes, with a Blues Breaker.
Did that ever?
It was real small. It was a custom shop amp,
right?
And it had a real big cult following.
Oh, cool.
So when we decided we wanted to do something a little different, people say, Fender Clean's great, 6L6s, 6V6s. Yeah. Well, what if we, and then we almost have like an alternate history. So let's say, Leah was really into Western swing and country and rock thing it didn't really get at the time. Yeah. But we had this like fake like, or another history. It's like, what if he was hanging with Pete Townsend? What if Pete came in, or Eric was like, this Bassman's really cool, but what else you got? What would it be that alternate history? So that's where it started. So really the flagship of that is the 45, which is a Bassman circuit. Yeah. You can blend both channels on the third input. You've got a variable output. But we wanted to offer a few different amps with different sort of sounds and feels. Yeah. So the 15, while it isn't based on any previous circuit we did, we feel that the nature of it comes from the Fender DNA. But EL84s, more preamp gain. It's got reverb built in. It's a digital reverb, but we felt that it worked well with high gain. Yes. Reverb tanks and high gain don't really mix.
I think in the last maybe 2 to 3 years, the digital reverb chips that are coming in amplifiers are totally different to what maybe you might have got 10 years ago. Oh yeah, I don't think anybody plugs into, you can have the two of these side by side. I don't think anybody's really going, oh my God, the reverb on this sounds so much better. It's probably bigger if you listen to it in isolation, but it's not. It's certainly a very usable reverb in that. We're comparable volumes in here, so I'm not as low as I could be, but that's that classic Fender sound, isn't it? Now I've got some pedals on the floor which aren't engaged at the moment, but I've also got additional gain stages within the amplifier. I don't know if I'm going to be turning the volume up a lot here, but that's its medium gain stage, okay? Now that's instantly a lot more gain than you would get out of the Blues Junior. And then there's a high gain, so if you want to go into the rock world, sounds great. But I'm going to leave it on its low setting because I thought it was fun today to just sort of show. People always want to know what good little pedal amps are, and I think these two are two of the best. So I've got basically a bunch of pedals that most of which I haven't tried before. So my EP Booster and my MXR Carbon Copy on the ends here are very, very familiar to me. And then we've just had a Greer Amps Moonshot arrived in the post today, which seems to be some sort of treble mid-boost thing. The Walrus Jupiter, which is a killer sounding fuzz pedal. And then the Angry Driver, which was a collaboration between Boss and JHS to put Blues Driver and an Angry Charlie in the same pedal. And I was just, even before Rick got here, I was jamming around. And so here are some general sort of, bit of everything. sounds. I mean, I haven't had a lot of time to sort of dial in certain sounds on this, but this fuzz is killing it. It's just like...
That's really nice. That's warm. I mean, really warm.
Yeah, and I was getting some harmonics to come out of it earlier as well, which sounded great. But again, it's just instantly just such a usable volume, you know. And there is a bit more to go. You might be able to explain. My colleague Pete, Danish Pete, who everyone who watches Andertons TV will know, said he got quite a bit more volume out of this one sort of gigging than he did out of this one, even though the rating is the same. Is that a speaker thing, or?
Partially it's the gain structure, how the amp's designed, and like I was saying, power 2 versus preamp gain.
Yeah.
It's just the way it's EQ'd as well. You know, it's just it's because there are less things kind of going on internally.
Right.
You know, the perceived volume can be slightly different. So yeah, definitely can be perceived as louder because of the way that it's set up.
So that's this. So that maybe even though the rating is the same, this one a little bit louder. So and I don't even know. I sort of and ah between which one is the obvious. You know, which one for me is the one that I would want to buy. I think there's probably, if I'm completely true to myself, and that's that I just like old stuff, I'd probably end up with a Blues Junior. But I'm forever kind of questioning why it is that I want old stuff when almost always the new stuff has just got more, you know, it's better value and more functionality, and the effects loop's certainly cool on that. It's such a personal journey, the guitar, isn't it? And if you're feeling like you're rocking it the best with an old 59 Strat into some ancient Fender Twin and a original Big Muff or whatever, you know, that's your thing. Or if you're playing a Elite Strat into a Kemper, you know, as long as it's doing it for you, then you've got the right rig, haven't you?
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those where it's like, at some point, if you do it right, you should totally forget about what you're playing and what you have, and you're just being creative. You're just getting to that place of.
That's very true.
Yeah, you know, because all of us, I'm a total gear nerd. You know, I mean, on my days off, I do go to guitar shops. You know, I mean, I don't get bored of it, but ultimately, I have to remind myself it's just gear. It's supposed to get you to that point of creativity and having fun, and don't, you know, you go down the rabbit hole, and sometimes you start chasing your own tail.
Anyway, look, we should just jam out with some more tones from these great amplifiers.
Absolutely.
And I really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy to be here. It's like I see the videos all the time, so it's cool to be here chatting with you and playing. I mean, that's awesome.
You're gonna email, Mum, I've been on Andertons TV.
I'm famous.
I'm sure you've been on way bigger YouTube channels than this one. But anyway, look, let's jam out. I'll try and play something slightly more original than Blues and E. I can't promise that that'll actually happen. But anyway, cheers, Rick. Thanks for coming in. Good luck. We'll see you at the NAMM show. Keep watching Andertons TV. We'll see you next time. Hey everybody, thanks for watching the Andertons Guitar YouTube channel. If you're a drummer or a keyboard player or interested in music technology, you might find one of our other channels interesting, and I'll put details of those in the description below. If you want to find out more about the products we've just featured, please click here. If you'd like to buy a t-shirt like this, please click here. If you want to watch another video on our guitar channel, click down here. And to subscribe to our guitar channel, click here. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.